Good evening, and welcome to another World of Warships video with Captain Darkwing Glacier. Unlike most of my videos, this one is not about gameplay, but rather concerns an issue of interest to the World of Warships community. With the release of the American Light Cruiser line, Wargaming announced a new premium ship, the American Light Cruiser Boise. Then, during testing, the ship was renamed the Nueve de Julio, and it was announced that it would become the first ship representing the Pan Americans. Now, I'm happy to see the Pan Americans get some representation in the game, but I do think that the Nueve de Julio was an unfortunate choice for that representation, especially considering that there were obvious alternatives. The real Nueve de Julio started off as the USS Boise, a Brooklyn-class light cruiser of the United States Navy that served in World War II, amassing an impressive war record. After the war, it was sold to Argentina, where it was renamed the Nueve de Julio. It's obvious that this ship was renamed by Wargaming for that reason. So what's wrong with the Nueve de Julio? It's not because the ship is Argentinian or Pan American. Rather, it's that the Nueve de Julio has a direct association with a very dark chapter in Argentinian history. For those of you who don't know, in the years 1974 to 1983, the military junta of Argentina engaged in what has been called the Dirty War, in which it hunted down people suspected of being political dissidents or against the government, kidnapped, tortured, and murdered them. Thousands were disappeared in this manner. In 1976, the Nueve de Julio, long since removed from active service, was used as a, quote, detention center where some of these atrocities occurred. The ship was not simply used as a prison, but rather for state terrorism specifically for the purpose of committing these atrocities. Because of the history associated with this ship, there's been some criticism by the World of Warships player community that perhaps another ship would have been a better choice to be the first one to represent the Pan Americans. Community contributor NoZoupForYou commented on this issue in a recent video. The link is provided in the description. Now, I enjoy Zoup's videos. They're always well done, very professional, and they address a lot of topics of interest to the World of Warships community. The video he made about this topic is titled World of Warships Nueve de Julio Controversy, Let Sleeping Ships Lie, with the word controversy in quotes, which kind of gives you an idea of what Zoup's opinion of this is. In the description, Zoup says, "Today I cover a topic I rather not, because I think it's silly. I am providing my opinion, but it basically boils down to this. If you don't like it, don't buy it. It's a ship in a game. There are other ships with dubious histories. This include navies that try to exterminate an entire religion of peoples and started a world war." When Zoup dismisses this topic as silly, it honestly sounds like he just doesn't want to be bothered with thinking about it in any depth. Zoup begins the video with feigned outrage and obvious sarcasm, where he lists other controversial ships, creating false equivalencies and describing a slippery slope, where if one ship is found to be controversial, that somehow requires that all ships must be. Then, in a series of ad hominem attacks, he implies that those who object to the ship's inclusion are thin-skinned. He questions their motives, stating that while some may care about the actual issue, many do not, and their motives are driven by a love of controversy, a desire to be offended, or perhaps having an axe to grind with wargaming. This argument implies that if there exists someone whose motives are not pure, then all objections can be dismissed regardless of motive. Zoup then claims to have empathy for those in Argentina whose families were affected by these atrocities, and then he dismisses them with a cavalier, "Don't buy it." Minimizing their feelings in this way might be considered many things, but it certainly isn't empathy. Zoup says, "This is a game about ships in history. They all have pasts, some more dubious than others, but you can't start picking and choosing what makes a ship better or worse." Yes, you can. This is an attempt at a slippery slope argument, and the slippery slope is a fallacy, not a valid logical argument. There can be a reasonable line drawn between which ships are appropriate for inclusion and which are not. Removing one ship because of specific details of its history does not require that all ships must be eliminated because of the arbitrary details of their history. If you believe there's a specific reason why a given ship should not be included in the game because of its specific history, then state it. Attempting to dismiss all objections because of a slippery slope argument smacks to me of laziness, in the sense of, I don't want to be bothered with having to explore the nuance of these arguments on a case-by-case basis to make a reasonable determination of what ships we should include, so let's just dismiss all objections out of hand. If any of the warships that are currently in the game were used historically for the express purpose of imprisoning and torturing civilians, I would argue for not including those ships in the game. The Kriegsmarine was the navy of a Nazi regime, but as far as I know, its vessels were not specifically used as concentration camps in the Holocaust. If any were, I would argue to remove those ships from the game. The problem is not that these ships were tools of an evil regime. For example, the General Belgrano, a ship that was the same class as the Nueve de Julio and formerly the USS Phoenix, was also controlled by the military junta of Argentina, and therefore it was also a tool of an evil regime. But the General Belgrano was not specifically used by that junta in the course of their committing atrocities. This is why I believe that the General Belgrano would make an excellent substitute for the Nueve de Julio in the game, and I think many players agree with me. No one is blaming the Nueve de Julio itself for the atrocities that were committed on board. Rather, the objection is that the specific history of that ship and its specific and direct association with those specific atrocities make it a poor choice to represent Argentina and Pan America in the game. I think Argentina and Pan America deserve better than that. Zoup continues, let's be honest. This specific controversy completely ignores the thousands of people that claim that somehow having anime related to World of Warships promotes pedophilia. What? It should ignore it, because it's a non sequitur. It's a red herring, and it's utterly irrelevant to this issue. Zoup goes on to say that he knows plenty in Argentina that are perfectly fine with the inclusion of the Nueve de Julio in the game. The argument that if some Argentinians are not offended, then it's automatically okay, regardless of what other Argentinians or even others who are not Argentinians think. And this argument is flat out wrong. Zoup then makes the claim that because some critics may not have known the details of Nueve de Julio's history until recently, their criticism is thus somehow invalid. There's no temporal moral cutoff where if a person learns of an atrocity after a certain date, they are for that reason not allowed to criticize it. Zoup also says that some people, Americans in particular, have a penchant for caring about things that are none of their business. And he implies that those who do not have a personal stake in the matter have no right to care about it. This is nonsense. The fact that I am not Argentinian myself does not mean that I am not allowed to be angered at the political imprisonment and torture that has occurred in that country. Shouldn't everyone, regardless of their nationality, be angered by things like this? By the same token, all Argentinians have a right to denounce the atrocities that have occurred in my country. For example, the genocide of the Native Americans or the slavery of African Americans. They should denounce those things. For someone to refrain from doing so by claiming that it's none of their business is evading moral responsibility. Now, this doesn't mean I have the right to decide for Argentinians or anyone else what their opinions must be regarding this issue. But it does mean that if there are those who do have a legitimate objection to the ship, I should respect that and be sensitive to their objections. If there is a way to rectify the issue, and in this case there certainly is, there's no reason not to do it. Despite claims to the contrary, it is in fact possible to be respectful to others without it inevitably becoming political correctness gone mad. Claiming that it is not possible is yet another slippery slope. There is a simple way to fix this issue. Rename the ship the General Belgrano. Whether or not they realized it at the time, I think Wargaming's decision to use the Nueve de Julio as the ship representing the Pan Americans was in poor taste. I am not going to buy the Nueve de Julio for this reason, but I am willing to forgive Wargaming if they fix it. If the ship were the Boise or the General Belgrano, I might buy it. I believe that those who try to dismiss objections to the ship's name are motivated either out of a dislike of political correctness or out of apathy towards the issue. They're inconvenienced by the concept of being respectful to others, so they just want the issue to go away. Now, before you accuse me of making an ad hominem attack of my own, I will clearly state that their motives do not make their arguments wrong. Their arguments are wrong because they are red herrings, non sequiturs, slippery slopes, and straw men. In conclusion, I do agree with Zoup's assertion that this controversy will eventually blow over, but the choice of this particular ship is in poor taste. Whether or not the controversy blows over does not change that fact. Anyway, that's what I have to say on this issue, so if you agree or disagree, please leave a comment, and thanks for watching.